And I want to say thank you to Nathan as one of our friends who comes across the river and the big scary bridge to come and be with us as often as he's able. You know, poetry has a public relations problem, which is basically the fault of poets themselves, you know, in a lot of cases. And there are plenty of people out there who could really enjoy poetry, who could really get all there is to get from the experience of making poetry a part of your life, who honestly have been made to feel, I think, that poetry is not for them. So the great privilege and challenge of being a poet laureate is that you're the public face of poetry. In some cases, the people that you meet are people, or you're the first poet that they've ever met in their entire life. So that's a pretty heavy responsibility. So that's why I can stand before you and say that our state poet laureate is a kick-ass state poet laureate, because there is not an elitist bone in this guy's body, and he is a regular person who knows how to talk to other regular people and not make them feel like a piece of shit because they haven't spent 20 years at university before they tried to read a poem. So bios are embarrassing. He's won awards. He's got books for sale that you could come up and check out later on. But I decided I would just speak from the heart about my experience of this man so far, and I think that you will be happy to hear from Tod Marshall. Let's welcome him.
That's actually a lot of pressure. Well, thank you for having me here today. Thanks to this wonderful space, Leah, and the gallery is fantastic. The wine is great. I hope that, I think that your comments about the bookstore are relevant for places like this. We have to keep them alive if they matter to us. And so it's good to see a crowd here, and we had a great crowd this afternoon. Obviously, the two of you are doing wonderful things for poetry in the county and in the city too. So everything that you said about me is true of you, and so thanks. I'm going to read a few poems by others, and I'm going to read for about 20 minutes or so, and share some new poems, some old poems, try to give a range of work. It's been a lot of fun. Being poet laureate. I've traveled a lot. I think I've put 2,500 miles on my car in 3 months, which for me is a hell of a lot of miles on the car. I've flown back and forth, and it's been a crazy experience, but it's also been a great joy because of the many events like this, where I teach at Gonzaga University, and in some ways that's kind of a real easy dynamic for the existence of poetry. Academia is a ready-made crowd. You've got captive students, hostages, if you will, and that you can share poetry with. But people that are coming out here tonight are here on a glorious evening when they could be sitting out by the river, taking in the wonderful sunshine, and they're making a declaration that poetry is as important to them tonight, more important because they're here, and that's beautiful. And I keep seeing that again and again and again going around the state, and it's really encouraging and wonderful. And our workshop this afternoon was I think fantastic. I'm always stunned at the level of writing that happens when we sit down and we tune each other in and we try to make something, and it was great. I thought I might begin with some poems by a friend of mine. He passed away on the day of the great bard's death, Shakespeare's death. He was called the Bard of Sherman Avenue. He lived in Coeur d'Alene, he published poems in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho for a number of years and worked there. He lived actually in Spokane, Washington. And he published very short, funny poems. He wrote about 800 of them over a 10-year span. And he had many thousands of devoted readers. And I think you'll get a sense of why when you hear some of his poems. They're all very short, and I think show his great wit. Summer Travels, and his name is Tom Wabker. He worked at Penaluna and Company in Coeur d'Alene. He was a Jayhawk like me. That's how we met one another. He went to the University of Kansas in the mid-60s, served in Vietnam, went to law school in Marquette, and then moved to Spokane. Summer travels, dead pigeon in Arizona. Smashed flat by a semi just outside of Bisbee. If he flies again, it will be like a Frisbee. TSA 11/18/2010. They pay us good wages to feel up your granny in case she's got A-bombs concealed in her fanny. And maybe Nathan, as the crosser of the bridge, I know there are some others tonight, this poem might resonate for you. Where Oregonians draw the line, summer travels. They don't much care if you decide to try assisted suicide and view it largely as a joke if you should take a tiny toke. Most everything they will let pass unless you try to pump your gas. So those are all by the Bard of Sherman Avenue. And there's one more, and I suppose before I read, well, I'll do it at the end. I'll say it, as the proud owner of a Yorkie poo, sometimes this poem hits a little close to home, but it's called To a Chihuahua. You claim to be a dog? Oh, please. You're pointless as a Pekingese. Your bark is but the high-pitched squeak that might come from a robin's beak. Your wee small body's thin and frail and weighs less than a real dog's tail. Your tiny teeth won't bruise a mouse, so how would you protect a house? No Sunday paper could you fetch, nor any flying frisbee catch. And if perchance a cat you chase, you'll disappear without a trace. No canine do you seem to me. Did he who made the lab make thee? With apologies to William Blake, of course. That's Tom Walker. Okay, so here are a few newer poems. This is called First World Concerns. Parking, carbon, peak oil, free range, what gets hard and with what frequency, whether to turn off cable and just stream. The second world is populated by bad habits, worry, impatience, fill in the blank. The third world is the body, what is felt in the blood, vulnerable girl or boy. The fourth world is what the squirrel, the sparrow, the skunk might do. To squirrel, to sparrow, to spray smelly scent all over offenders, the many offenders. The fifth world is everyone's search engine history, that stale air. There is no sixth world, only the imperative to gather 6 things and keep them safe, really safe. See if you can. See if you can hold them and still run fast enough. See if you can leave the rest at the curb. Have faith, a 7th worlder will arrive to haul them all away. This is Wandering No Clouds with, I suppose, forget William Wordsworth, no apology to William Wordsworth. Wandering No Clouds. My boyfriend says that he likes the work of Jim Dine, but I once saw Pinocchio drinking from a paper cup and knew that he and I were both unsure about what it meant to be a boy, what it means to sing about a host of golden penises swaying and dancing in the breeze, tossing their heads in sprightly dance toward the shining sun. I too am a sun, brighter than that distant star. My yellow light is a black-eyed Susan against the green field of day. See the bright petals? They are the poems I would pluck to give to Jim Dine if he would walk with my boyfriend and me down the streets of Brooklyn, 3 men hand in hand in seersucker suits, or Dine in casual pants if that suited him. But poems like to get gussied up, to feel prettier than pants, to go outside and breathe in as much of the world as possible, because air is better that way, even if there is the risk of smog from the factories down by the bay. There is always the risk of something. And yet I say, if you're going to run with scissors, then you might as well tie your shoes together and sprint. The black center of the flower is, of course, the sadness we carry. But Mr. Jim Dine, hear this. You become a real boy when you lie. And the eyes of Pinocchio need not be black. They can be blue or green or even purple. They can be never-ending daffodils or even golden pricks, just so long as that puppet sings along with me late at night, the karaoke machine playing, you supply the tune. After, he'll put me in his pocket like a poem and say, we are toys and flowers. We are the continuous heavens over the world. We are friends. This is another new poem, newish poem anyway. It's called Michigan. Tonal gear shift here. Yeah, Michigan. I woke to a single small turd at the end of the bed and wasn't surprised. The sun had just begun to grab the day and shake it. Some people stirring for work, others slumping behind steering wheels, finally finished with long shifts in Dundee, more cylinder heads fitted onto more engines, to drop into more Chryslers, to crawl around the country for a decade or two, and then break in Nevada, a deserted parking lot, sand with cacti sprawling for miles around, boiling radiator, cracked block, coolant and oil puddled on pavement. If I believe in the soul, that's my vision of the end. Steam, hissing, occasional mechanical clicks, nothing fixable, and then a cold night's uncountable stars. In Bath, Michigan, the ghost of Andrew Kehoe still sucks air into the black hole of his mouth, devouring what's meant for children. He is a busy man, trees to saw, bricks to grind to dust, a dead wife to dump behind the barn, barn set to blaze, fiery diversion. 3 witnesses recalled his bright smile and friendly wave when they passed his truck as he drove to trigger dynamite he'd wired throughout the school. 3 dozen dead kids, more, many of them burnt to charred paste, and he wasn't done. That was 1927, but it could be tomorrow. In 1990, my buddies called her the Night Stalker, and I knew how our time together would end, and I did it anyway. The next weekend in Ann Arbor, I saw her at a bar, spiked blonde hair, face painted pale, eyes dark with a splash of silvery glitter. She smiled and dared me to speak, to call out the woman who had held me inside her, slept against my chest, and then rose early to shit on my sheets. A philosopher wrote that shame is rooted in language, anger and fear in our genes. That may be the case, but what's true is that I said nothing, looked away, knew I'd do it all again. Here are 2 poems by others. This is by Jericho Brown. It was just published in the Bennington Review. It's a pretty cool sonnet, I think. I'm kind of a sonnet freak, and this is a neat little turn on the form. I'm a meterhead too. That might not be apparent from the poems that I've read, but I just love scansion and that tradition. Jericho Brown, Independence. I am not your Thomas Jefferson. 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 Watch me fuck up your architecture, just as I built Monticello with my hands. Jericho Brown. And then I have a friend here tonight, and I know that one of the poems that's really important to her is Adrienne Rich's Aunt Jennifer's Tigers, so I thought I might share that. Aunt Jennifer's tigers prance across the screen, bright topaz denizens of a world of green. They do not fear the men beneath the tree, they pace in sleek chivalric certainty. Aunt Jennifer's fingers fluttering through the wool find even her ivory needle hard to pull. The massive weight of Uncle's wedding band sits heavily on Aunt Jennifer's hands. When Aunt is dead, her terrified hands will lie, still ringed by the ordeal she was mastered by. The tigers in the panel that she made will go on prancing, proud and unafraid. Audrey and Rich's Aunt Jennifer's Tigers. Okay, so a couple older poems and then I'll be finished. I heard the word loam tonight, and it's one of my favorite words, and so I wanted to read a loam poem. And it's one that is a blatant rip-off poem. The form is completely stolen, much of the language is completely stolen, but so be it, that's what we do. Loam. Love is peasant, love is find. It lends me, it is unlike toast, it is prow, it is ride, not self-seating, it is easy language, it keeps sandy loam close. Love does not spite, but rejoices chartreuse, celebrates brindle, cheers wildflower bloom. Love always process, always trout, always whistle and flute, always, always very dear. Three remain, grain, hap, and love. And the greatest of these, my brothers and sisters, is love. Always peasant, always prow, always sandy loam, and always, always near. And I thought I should couple that with another religious poem. This is Describe Wildflowers to Ethics. The ground gives a push, rocks applaud, and nearby waterfalls like rivers of joyful tears. That time laughing so hard at my son, toddling around the house with an erection on which he'd hung the friendship bracelet from the Bible people that said, "What would Jesus do?" Answer that one, and you might be able to see those purples, reds, and yellows, the subtle lavender gloss, sheeny pinks, and the over-the-top oranges, and not be tempted to pick the explosive petals to press into a notebook with the desperate hope you could one day open the pages and say, "As it was, so it shall be." Try again. Write scribbles of smoke against the sky, Philium, trillium, birdfoot, violet, blue flag. Try paintbrush, buttercup. Try please. Try fire and tears. Try greeny, green, green. And these are a couple of poems from Bugle. Bugle is kind of an unpleasant book. It's a little brassy, but it's also, it has at the center of it, I suppose, a lot of dynamics connected to extraction. And extraction, both in terms of the extraction industry, the big pit mine in Butte, the Berkeley mine, is kind of a central metaphor to the book, but also extraction in terms of the dredging of material that sometimes becomes our art. I lived in Vancouver for a little bit over on 4th Plain. Thanks for the homage to 4th Plain Boulevard. I drove over there and there's nothing at the house. I mean, the house that I lived in burnt down, and the strip mall next door where I used to get groceries and rent video games is empty. Yeah. And so Chris's ghost town thing just was hauntingly true for a moment. And so, but there are emotional ghosts in the air over there, and it felt a little weird. And I think that anytime we're dredging up those ghosts, we're kind of scratching our insides, and I suppose that maybe the poems in Bugle are about those things that we scratch out, and how can we make that material into music, even if it's a harsh bugle blasting. This is never one to paint space, I paint air. Another jumper broken by the ground under the river bridge. Before the fall, did he consider water, choose to land on hard rock, intestines spread in bright coils of purple, red, and pink, or just fuck up and miss the chance for survival splash of the deep back eddy where buoyant washed up stuff like plastic bottles and traffic cones mosh for days. In the late 80s, Robbie Brown told us he'd rather die than rot inside out of leukemia. We passed around a pipe, nodded, nervously laughed. Chemo, he lived. Kirk said, "Carpe fucking diem, I'd jump." And sure enough, outed by his mom, he did. This poem doesn't have a title, it just has a happy face emoticon. But the title's origin is long before emoticons existed. And so think about it as a happy face of some sort. In Wichita, we shot speedballs, and I thought my heart would skitter onto the floor in Kenny's living room, a wind-up monkey spattering smacks on a snare drum. We watched the Dukes of Hazzard. Kenny was just out of prison. Thrasher's dilated eyes showed the General Lee floating through air. By 4 a.m, we were driving around trying to trade my Walkman and a 20 for another dime. I want to tell someone about the flame beneath the spoon, how the bubbling drugs made music, how we all went into the bedroom to shake Kenny's girl awake, how Waylon Jennings singing made it okay. You got good veins, Kenny said, thumping my elbow pit. I saw them rise to meet the needle, to greet, to say yee-haw and welcome, smile, have a nice day. And I thought I might finish with an older poem. Chris launched us this evening with Whitman, and Whitman certainly is one of my guardian angels in poetry, I suppose, but so is Gerard Manley Hopkins, the incredibly tortured Jesuit, probably the most unfortunate thing in his life that he was a Jesuit, but it just caused him such horrible agony, I think, but it brought some great poems out, I suppose. And so I steal a line blatantly from his poem As Kingfishers Catch Fire, and the line is, I say more, later in the poem. I think that's the only thing that you need to know. There are some incredibly erudite allusions to places like Applebee's and the Gap, but I'm sure you can follow those. So, yeah, not in this one, but and thank you again for having me here tonight. It's really cool to hear about some of the values that are so dear to me. That the fact that we need a little crazy, we need a little passion, we need a little energy, we need a little mystery, and the arts are the place where we find that stuff. We're not going to find them on our phones. We're not going to find them in so many other areas, but the arts, I think, are places where we can find those. So it's great to see so many people out for the arts. Metaphysic with Applebee's. Geese rise from the darkening lake. Between the honk and feathery whoosh, they become the lake's memory, called ripple, lifted by something that's also letting go of the setting sun. Like this. I'm driving from the therapist, from one of those agonies we try to wipe away with the tears, throw away with wet mounds of Kleenex, and shove away with purpose, with something resembling hope, with hurry, yes, always with hurry, after those spendy hours of grief. And today there's traffic, Memphis traffic, a stoplight surrounded by the sprawl of suburbs and shops, strip malls filled with the Gap, Eddie Bauer, Blockbuster, and Applebee's. You've been there. The cars locked together, an exhaustive mess of go nowhere, and occasionally a honk, someone flipping the bird, or two cars crumpling together in a fender bender. And then, without a flutter or thunder, without music or lightning, or even a prophet's heralding cry, all and each of the drivers, all and each of their passengers, mothers and sons and uncles and friends and more, the tense drivers clenching wheels or banging drum solos with damp palms, even the ones plunging fingers deep into the retentive depths of their noses, all and each and more, the screaming baby exciting itself to sweaty exhaustion, the fat jogger in too tight shorts, his Walkman bumping out some motivational beat, echoed by the synchronized jiggle of jello-y thighs, the drooling dogs hanging heads from back windows, or roasting on the flat beds of trucks up from Mississippi, all and each and more. The ice cream man, wary cyclist, a gray squirrel skittering across a telephone line, and still more the manhole covers, a thrown-out Coke can flattened in the street, bent bicycle rim, two red wrappers for French fries, each linty grain of filth and flesh and trash, seal and plastic, wood paper, dirt and dust, strung together by silvery threads which fuse into a tender palm of light. No, I did not turn the car around to ask for more information on the benefits of medication. Someone honked. And you know the rest. The signal turns from red to green. Some people turn to Applebee's to eat. And the stunning seraphim strings turn into lines of traffic, the white hyphens that lead away to measured lives. And someone flipping the bird, or maybe car horns recall, of course, the geese rising and flapping, the geese gone, a lake ripples, breeze dimpling the water's skin, and then transition back to, oh, what a neat thing. I say more. If you see a man stopped in traffic, tears streaming down his face, what will it take to make you believe that he and you, all those eyes and its, the ugly and glorious things we build and buy, think and feel, sell and hug and throw away, are lights? Believe that even we, creatures that cause such scarring pain, beautiful jumbles of skin and bone, fumbled intentions, and the enduring silk of dreams, are lights. Believe. For all the Buicks and babies, Eddie Bowers and Applebee's, for all the honked horns, plumes of exhaust, thoughts loose through every head, all the dejected excrement and holy hosts of this blessed mess, shine. Yes, we shine. Spears of grass piercing the sky, we shine. Stars riven to clumpy mud, we shine. Birdsong sirening through the quivering leaves, luminous blossoms sprouting the lightning bolt of spring. We shine, oh geese, oh tears, oh traffic, oh yes. We shine, we love, we light. Thank you.
Thank you, Tod Marshall. You know, one of the reasons why I get up here and say that he's a kick-ass poet laureate is that he's filled every moment of his time in Vancouver with meeting with different people, going different places, not really a moment to, or not many moments to rest or breathe. And that's really someone taking the job seriously and understanding that it's very important, and also having fun while doing it, which I respect. So we're going to have a break so that you can buy some of his books, maybe get some wine or food. There are also, there's plenty of information up here about different things that are going on. We usually do about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll be back for more open mic. Let's hear it again for Tod Marshall. All right, see you soon. Be good to those bar.